Tom Williams stood in the kitchen of the small cottage where he lived on the construction site, wrinkling his nose at the bitter taste of coffee. At 45, his face was weathered from years in the sun. There was gray in his dark hair at the temples, but his blue eyes were still as sharp as a knife. You could tell he'd been through a war or two, and that had served him well in civilian life. He reached for the newspaper, enjoying the quiet before heading out to the construction site. His simple kitchen showed how he took a practical view of life. The salary of a construction foreman was low, but it provided a comfortable life for his family, his wife Helen, and their 12-year-old daughter Maria. The silence was broken by the sharp ringing of his phone. Tom's hand froze halfway to his coffee cup. Unknown number. Mr. Williams? This is Memorial Hospital. Your daughter Maria's in our emergency room. We can't talk about it on the phone, but you need to come straight away. I'm on my way, Tom replied. When he got to the emergency room, he needed all his military training. Maria was lying on the bed, her face covered with ugly bruises. Daddy, said the daughter. Tom went over to her and took her hand. I'm here, baby. Tell me what happened. Maria spoke quietly. I came home early and heard a noise upstairs. In your bedroom, said the daughter. My mum was there. I heard my uncle's voice. They were together. Those words hit Tom like a punch to the gut. Ellen, his wife of 25 years, with her brother, who was a big businessman. Maria carried on. I shouted. Then these bodyguards of my uncle's showed up and grabbed me. Then they threw me down the stairs. She was wiping her eyes. They're still there, Dad, drinking their whiskey. Okay, said Tom. I'll be right back. Maria grabbed his wrist. Just don't do anything stupid. In reply, Tom's lips curved into a cold smile. He found the nurse's station and went over to the desk. My daughter. Maria Williams. I need to know her injuries. The nurse looked at the computer. Contusions. Possible concussion. X-rays were taken of my ribs and right wrist. The doctor's given me some painkillers. I need all the paperwork. Tom interrupted her. Photos and a medical exam. The nurse said it doesn't work like that. Do it, Tom insisted. Those freaks won't get away with it. The nurse looked at his face, then nodded slowly. I'll see what I can do. Tom was all mixed up. He couldn't get his head around what was going on. Ellen, his wife, the woman he'd built a life with, had betrayed him, along with his own brother. Donald, the guy who used to show up at family dinners with expensive wines and condescending smiles. Tom always felt like he was a bit of a snake in the grass, but bodyguards? This was more than a simple matter. Donald's business dealings have always seemed dodgy. There was just too much money involved. Too much money. Too little explanation. Tom pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. Max, it's Williams. You remember that favor you did for me? I need everything you can find on Donald Stern's business dealings. And I mean everything. He's not talking anymore. We were married for 25 years. His wife's betrayal hurt him deeply, but that wasn't the reason he was enraged. His daughter, his child. They'd gone too far. No father could just let it go. Tom went back to his daughter's room. She was restlessly stirring in her sleep. He looked at her scarred face and remembered the day she was born. He'd promised to protect her from anything that could hurt her. He messed up today, but he won't mess up again. The doctor came over. Mr. Williams, we need to talk about your daughter's injuries. Tell me everything, Tom said. I want to know exactly what they did to my daughter. As the doctor went through Mary's injuries, Tom's rage turned to ice. After the chat, Tom moved away from the bed and dialed another number. Detective? This is Thomas Williams. We need to talk about Donald Stern and his associates. It's a lot more serious than you think. Tom ended the call. Ellen, Donald, bodyguards. They thought they were untouchable. They thought they could hurt his family and laugh about it over his whiskey. But they were wrong. They had no idea what kind of person they were dealing with. But they'll learn. Tom's on the case. He sat down on a chair by Maria's bedside and began to think about what he needed to do. Maria's got to be protected first. Tom thought furiously about how messed up these people were for hurting his daughter. It was a mistake to think they'd get away with it. After leaving the hospital, Tom got into his Jeep. As he drove up to the house, Tom kept his eyes peeled for unfamiliar cars. There were 2 black SUVs with tinted windows in the driveway. Tom parked a block away and walked over. The front door was open and music was coming from upstairs, along with some pretty loud laughter. Tom slipped through the side door and walked silently through his own house like an intruder. He could smell cigarette smoke in his house, which he never allowed. He could hear voices in the living room, a deep, arrogant man's voice. It was Donald's voice. "You miserable bastard." Ellen's voice, a bit slurred from the booze, joined in. She said, "He never suspected a thing. He was too busy with his precious work. Coffee at 6, news at 6:15. Tom clenched his fists. 25 years of marriage had turned into a joke for her brother's amusement. Tom stepped through the doorway. He'd never forget it. Ellen was lying on the sofa with a glass in her hand and her blouse half unbuttoned. Donald sat beside her, his arm around her shoulders. Two men in black suits stood at the windows, trying to look professional despite the beer in their hands. "Leave," Tom said, cutting through the music. Everyone stopped moving. Eleanor's drink slipped from her fingers and splashed onto the carpet. Donald's grin faded. "Well, well, well." Donald stretched out and looked at his bodyguards. "The landlord's back. You've got 5 seconds," Tom said. "Then I'm going to start throwing you out of the house." One of the bodyguards, a young, muscular guy, stepped forward. "Listen, pal." But he was interrupted by Tom. Years of combat training had turned him into a violent person. His first blow crushed the man's larynx. When the bodyguard tried to grab Tom by the throat, Tom's knee hit the solar plexus. The man collapsed, panting. The second guard reached for his weapon. Tom grabbed his arm and twisted it so that the bones crunched. The guard screamed. Tom then slammed his head against the wall. The man passed out. 15 seconds, 2 threats neutralized, Tom said. Donald jumped back, pulling Ellen with him. "Let's be reasonable." "Sensible?" Tom gestured at them. "As if your people were reasonable with my daughter." "She shouldn't have been here," Ellen piped up. "It's not our fault." Tom slapped his wife. "Don't you dare blame her." Donald tried to make a move to the door, but Tom grabbed him by the throat and pinned him against the wall. Donald's legs were dangling and his face was flushed. "Please," Donald wheezed. "We can talk about it. Discuss?" Tom upped the ante. "How did your men talk to Maria? With their fists?" He kicked Donald in the stomach with his knee and then let him fall. As Donald gasped for air, Tom's boot brushed his ribs. Once, twice, 3 times. "Stop! You'll kill him!" shouted Ellen. "No." Tom sounded pretty calm. "Not yet." He grabbed Donald by the hair, yanking his head upward. "Your people hurt my little girl. I think I'll return the favor." And then came a beating so methodical, so brutal, and so precisely calculated that it was like watching someone doing a maths problem. Tom knew exactly how much damage a human body could take. He made Donald keep awake and feel every blow. When he finished, Donald was lying on the floor, curled up, sobbing. Blood was dripping from his nose and lips, spreading across the carpet Tom had laid last summer. Tom turned to Ellen. She slumped against the couch, shivering. "Tommy, please," she sobbed. "I could explain." "Don't call me that." He looked at her like she was a stranger. "Get your things and get out. If you're still here in 10 minutes, you'll be sorry." Ellen, staggering, rose to her feet. "Where am I supposed to go?" "Ask your brother," Tom replied. Tom turned to the bodyguards, one of whom was unconscious and the other with his arm in a sling. "Take your boss and get out of here. If I see either of you again, they won't find your bodies." The guard who'd been conscious got to his feet and helped his partner up. They lifted Donald, who groaned in pain. "This isn't over," Donald muttered, his lips stained with blood. "You're right." Tom smiled, and both guards took a step back without thinking. "It's only just beginning." He watched as they loaded Donald into one of the SUVs. Ellen trailed after them, her mascara streaming down her cheeks. Tom had a quick look around the living room, the broken glass, blood on his carpet. There was a cigarette burning on his coffee table. The house he'd built was sullied by their presence. His phone vibrated. It was a text from Mac. "He's got something. Meet me tonight." Tom nodded to himself. Ellen and Donald thought it was all over. They thought he had taken his revenge and spent his rage. But they were wrong. This wasn't about getting even. This was about justice. It was for him, for Maria. They'd been laughing at him behind his back for years. Tom went to his bedroom, their bedroom. The bed where she'd betrayed him was still stained with evidence of their affair. He took the sheets off, carried them to the backyard, and set them on fire. Then he made a bunch of calls, first to his bank and his lawyer, then to a police detective. Ellen thought she knew him, thought he was predictable, boring, and safe. But she was about to find out how wrong she'd been. Tom was sat in his chair, staring at the TV screen. The house felt empty and a bit run down. His phone vibrated again. It was a message from Max. "Building ground, in an hour." Tom closed his eyes, the memories flooding back. Afghanistan, 2000. An ambush that almost killed them both. Max pulled him out from under the bullets to safety. Their duty to each other is written in blood and gunfire. But Tom wasn't always someone who could just go out and get revenge. He used to be a small-town kid. His time in the military toughened him up, teaching him about duty, loyalty, and how the world can be a pretty tough place where you've got to be able to handle the rough stuff. He remembered the day he'd met Ellen. She worked as a waitress at the local diner, always smiling and chatting away. He'd just been discharged, but he was still getting used to being a civilian. She was a bit of a lifeline for him, a reality check in a world where the gunshots and screams still rang out in his head. Their meetings were full of energy and passion. She talked about her dreams, the big house, fancy cars, and the life her brother Donald enjoyed. Tom promised to give her everything he could, not money, but stability, security, a home. For a long time, that seemed to be enough. They had a daughter, Maria, and bought this house together. Tom worked his way up from laborer to foreman, taking pride in his honest work. Ellen seemed happy, or at least he thought so. But now he was wondering how long her lies had lasted. She'd looked at his rough hands and work boots with disdain for how long? How long had she been scheming with Donald, laughing at the faithful husband who trusted her? Donald! Tom's hands clenched at the thought of his son-in-law, the golden boy of the family, in his designer suits and pleasant conversation. Tom never trusted him. He saw the predator beneath the polished exterior. But for Ellen's sake, he put up with Donald, shared meals with him, put up with his subtle put-downs and condescending smiles. Tom's phone rang. "Detective. Williams," she said. "I've got some info about your son-in-law," the detective said straight off. "You're not going to like it. They weren't just bodyguards in your house. They were organized crime. Donald's in the crime business, putting pressure on local businesses. He's got cops on the payroll, judges in his pocket. But that's not all," the detective continued. "Your wife has been withdrawing money from your joint account and moving it into offshore accounts. How long has this been going on for?" "At least 6 months. "Williams," the detective faltered. "They were planning to rob you. The divorce papers are already drawn up. They were going to take everything, leaving you with just the debts. Thanks for the info, detective." "Williams." The detective's voice got sharper. "Don't do anything stupid. Donald's a very dangerous man." "So did I." Tom ended the conversation. He went into the bedroom. He opened the wardrobe and pushed the clothes to one side. The safe was tucked behind a fake panel, and it was his personal space. It was a secret Ellen never revealed. Inside, there were the remnants of his military life. There were documents and medals. There was a book of contacts from his time in the service. People who owed him. Guys who were good at solving problems calmly. It was dark when he arrived at the construction site. Max's pickup was parked in the shadows, away from the streetlights. Tom went over to it, keeping an eye out for any cameras or stuff. Max was standing by a pile of steel girders. Even after 25 years of civilian life, he hadn't lost any of his military toughness. He still moved like a soldier, alert and ready. "You look awful," Max said as Tom approached. "There's something I want to show you." He got his laptop out of the truck's cab. He'd done some digging into Donald's operations. Turns out this guy's got his fingers in a lot of pies. Real estate fraud, racketeering, money laundering. But here's the best part. He switched the screen to Tom. Bank statements, property records, shell companies. Your wife's name keeps cropping up. She's been working with Donald for years, helping him move money. She's not just his mistress. She's his partner, not just his mistress. Tom looked over the documents, his expression hardening. "She made a fool out of me." "There's more to it than that," Max went on. "Donald's in trouble. He borrowed a lot of money from some pretty important people. Apparently, he's pretty desperate for cash. That's probs why they pushed the deadline back." "A deadline?" Tom asked. Max pulled out more papers. "They've been planning this for months. The divorce, the transfer of assets, the whole shebang. They were going to bankrupt you and put you in Donald's debt. You were going to lose everything, your house, your savings. They even said you might end up in jail." Tom took all this in, but didn't say anything. The betrayal was worse than he'd thought. It wasn't just an affair, it was a proper plot to destroy him. Tom's jaws clenched. "They hurt my little girl. And they'll pay for it," Max assured him. "But you have to be smart and careful in this business. Donald's got connections, and you're going in head on. You're going to end up dead or in jail. I'm not going to kill him," Tom said quietly. "After all, death is too quick and clean. I want them to suffer. I want them to lose everything they've ever planned for me." Tom stood up. "I need you to keep digging. Bank records, business dealings, everything. I want to know every skeleton in their closet." "What about Ellen?" Tom's face went cold. She made her mind up. Now she's got to deal with it. He left Max and drove home, thinking about what to do next. The house just felt different now. It looked like a crime scene, not a house. He went through every room. He even checked the jewelry box for that extra phone she had hidden in it. Financial records hidden behind file cabinets. Business cards from offshore banks. He stopped in Maria's room. The walls were covered in photographs, family vacations, birthdays, graduations. Ellen smiles, plays the devoted mother, and plots to ruin their lives. Message from Maria. "When can you pick me up?" Tom replied to the message. "Tomorrow morning, get some rest." Another message came in, this time from Ellen. "We need to talk." Tom deleted it without replying. He spent the night sat in his chair, cleaning his gun, making lists and planning. Ellen and Donald thought they knew him, predictable and reliable Thomas Williams. A man who always plays by the rules, but they had no idea what he was really like. At dawn, Tom made coffee, right this time. He'd already experienced betrayal in the war. He'd seen the effect it had on other people, but this was different. This wasn't a fight. This was family. They brought war into his home. They threatened his child. Now they'll know what that means. The sun rose over his wrecked house, marking the end of one life and the beginning of another. Thomas Williams, husband, father, home builder, was gone. In his place was a warrior who'd been asleep for a long time. He was a man who had nothing to lose and everything to gain in revenge. Tom strolled down the hospital corridors to Maria's room. He saw Maria lying in bed through the window. "Hey, little one," he said quietly as he entered the room. "The doctor says I can go home tomorrow," Maria said. "Not at home," Tom replied. "I've arranged for you to stay with Sarah for a bit. It's not safe at home right now. I've got some business to take care of." Maria's fingers tightened around his wrist. "Mom called me." Tom looked even more annoyed. "What did she say?" She tried to explain, said it wasn't what I thought it was. "That Uncle Donald." Maria's voice was trembling. "I should have known something was wrong," Maria continued. "You could just tell by the way they whispered when you weren't around. Uncle Donald started showing up more often when you were at work. And another thing, Mom's meeting with the lawyers. I saw the paperwork in her car last week." Tom walked over to her bedside. "Tell me everything you remember. When did Donald start coming around more often?" As Maria spoke, Tom started thinking about the details, trying to make a timeline of the betrayal. Ellen has been going to real estate meetings for hours on end, and Donald's occasional visits, which always coincided with Tom's being at the construction site. There were whispered phone calls, hidden documents. Then, out of the blue, there's a knock on the door. Max was standing in the doorway. "Do you have a minute?" Max asked. They went into the hallway, and Max took him to one side. "Those guys you beat up weren't just hired bodyguards. One of them works security at a casino downtown. They've got a lot of mob ties. The other has a rap sheet as long as my arm. Extortion, racketeering, attempted murder. And that wasn't all." Max looked around before continuing. He asked around about Donald. "Apparently someone upstairs is looking out for him. He's got judges in his pocket. Someone makes sure it stays clean." "Can you give me the names of these people?" Tom asked. Max nodded. "I'm on the case, but watch your back. You're not dealing with amateurs." Tom's phone vibrated. A detective wants to meet up. "Keep digging," he told Max. "I need everything you can find." When he got back to Maria's room, she was dozing. The detective working on Maria's case called. The nurse told Tom that the police wanted to interview her tomorrow. "Number?" Tom's voice was convincing. "She's been through enough. They can talk to me." The nurse seemed unsure. "Nah, mate, it's not domestic violence," Tom replied. "It's something else entirely." Later, as night fell over the hospital, Tom sat and watched Maria sleep. His phone lit up with messages from Ellen, requests, explanations, threats. He deleted them all. The woman he'd married, the mother of his child, was gone. In her place was a stranger who was out to get him. But now, looking at his daughter's battered face, he felt he was ready for war. Ellen, Donald, they're thugs. They brought violence into his home. They hurt his child. They tried to take everything away. But Thomas Williams hadn't learned how to fight. The police station was a hive of activity as Tom made his way to the detective's desk. The detective was a woman in her 30s. She gestured for him to sit down. She pulled out a thick file. "There's some info you need to see." She spread the pictures out on her desk. There was surveillance footage of Ellen meeting various men in expensive suits. "This is Fernando Torres." The detective pointed to a handsome man in his 30s. "He's a con artist, specializing in real estate fraud. We've had our eye on him for years, but nothing's come of it. Your wife has met with him at least 6 times in the last month. Tom had a good look at the photos. What's the connection? Torres helps people hide money. He's the guy who sets up shell companies. Offshore accounts, basically. He's good at it. We never managed to prove anything, though. Izzy leaned forward. About 3 weeks ago, Ellen moved most of your shared savings into an account that's a bit of a mystery. The paperwork looked legit. Your signature was on everything. I didn't sign anything, but someone did. Someone good enough to defraud the bank. Izzy pulled out more documents. And that's not all. Do you know what kind of business your brother-in-law has? Money laundering, probably drugs. And those bodyguards who shot your daughter? They work for the Castellano family. The name hit Tom like a punch to the gut. The Castellanos controlled a lot of the city's organized crime. Was Donald really involved with them? You need to back off, Izzy warned. These guys don't play games. They'll kill you. Tom laughed, but it was a bit unkind. They've already tried to destroy me. They hurt my daughter. You expect me to just leave? I expect you to be smart, said the detective. Izzy lowered her voice. Look, I can't officially help you, but I can still help you out, just on a personal level. She popped a USB drive on the table. It's got everything we've got on Torres, Donald, and their operations. She said, here's the info you need on Torres and Donald, including their account numbers and everything else. Tom put the disc in his pocket. I owe you one. Yeah, well, you do too. The detective took his hand as he stood up. Whatever you're planning, make sure I don't have to arrest you for it. Then Tom drove from the police station to his bank. The manager looked sympathetic as she read his reports. I'm sorry, Mr. Williams. She went on to say that all the transfers had been authorized. Your wife had authorized signatures. Show me all the transactions. The manager got the records. Tom's jaw clenched as he saw their life savings disappear. College funds, retirement accounts, all gone. Ellen was thorough. His phone vibrated. Max is sending the meeting coordinates. Tom found him in the car park outside the hospital. I got the names I wanted, Max said. Judge Presley tried all the cases involving Donald's business. He was in the business of dismissing charges. It looks like Castellano has a pretty tight grip on the judge. What about bodyguards? This is Vincent and Tony Bacaliani. They're professional criminals. Vincent's still in the ICU. You really shook him up. Tony was sent to the outpatient clinic. Tom nodded. Where does he live? Tom asked, narrowing his eyes. Why do you need to know that? We need to ask him some questions, Tom replied. These guys are pros, Tom. They'll kill you. Well, they can try. Tom's voice was cold. So, are you going to tell me where he lives or not? Max let out a sigh and handed over a piece of paper. This will be your funeral. Tom's next stop was his home. Ellen grabbed most of her stuff, but he wasn't interested in clothes and jewelry. He went straight to her home office. It was the one place she never let him visit. The file cabinets turned out to be a real treasure trove. There were bank statements and other documents, correspondence, meeting minutes. I got the names I wanted, Max said. Judge Presley tried all the cases involving Donald's business. He was in the business of dismissing charges. It looks like Castellano has a pretty tight grip on the judge. What about bodyguards? This is Vincent and Tony Bacaliani. They're professional criminals. Vincent's still in the ICU. You really shook him up. Tony was sent to the outpatient clinic. Tom nodded. Where does he live? Tom asked, narrowing his eyes. Why do you need to know that? We need to ask him some questions, Tom replied. These guys are pros, Tom. They'll kill you. Well, they can try. Tom's voice was cold. So, are you going to tell me where he lives or not? Max let out a sigh and handed over a piece of paper. This will be your funeral. Tom's next stop was his home. Ellen grabbed most of her stuff, but he wasn't interested in clothes and jewelry. He went straight to her home office. It was the one place she never let him visit. The file cabinets turned out to be a real treasure trove. There were bank statements and other documents, correspondence, meeting minutes. Ellen documented everything, probably as a form of self-defense. But now, her own paranoia is probably going to do more harm than good. There were pictures in a hidden folder. There were pictures of Helena with Donald in some pretty intimate situations. Blackmail insurance, Tom realized. She'd played everyone, even with your accomplice. Then his phone rang. It was Ellen. Tom wanted to delete her number, but then he thought better of it. It was time to play his game. Yeah? Tommy, please answer. Her voice was weepy. We need to talk. It's not what you think. Tom replied calmly. No. You stole my money, didn't you? And you watched Donald's men throw our daughter down the stairs, didn't you? Ellen replied quietly, "I didn't know they would hurt her." "After all," the Donald promised. Tom was indignant. "What did Donald promise? That he would help you rob me? By framing me for his crimes?" There was a moment of silence. "How did you know that?" "I know everything, Ellen. About Julian Torres, Castellano, Judge Presley." Tom took a moment to let Ellen process his words. "You really should have been more careful with your paperwork," Ellen whispered. "Tom, please." Her voice was full of fear now. "You don't realize who you're dealing with. These people." Tom interrupted her. "You're the one who brought these people into my house, and they hurt my baby. Now you can watch me destroy their entire world." "Tommy, they're gonna kill you. Better people have tried them," Tom said, and ended the call. His laptop booted up, and he inserted the USB drive he got from the detective. There were hours of surveillance footage, financial reports, and a bunch of other material that the police had collected but didn't use as evidence. All this data helped the vigilante understand his enemy's actions. There was also a file with info on Julian Torres's past victims, the people he tricked, the lives he ruined. Tom started taking notes. These people he tricked are out for revenge. They just need someone to show them how to get it done. Tom thought about what needed to be done that evening. After all, Ellen and Donald thought they were just dealing with a simple construction foreman, someone predictable who plays by the rules. But they forgot or just didn't know what he was like before. The things he did while serving in the military. Skills he'd picked up and never forgotten. Tom smiled in the dark. It's time to remind them. When Tom got there, the bar was almost empty. Max was sitting in a corner booth, folders scattered across the desk, a half-empty glass of whiskey in front of him. Even after running the hospital for 20 years, his military bearing hadn't softened. "Hey, are those the hospital reports?" Tom asked, slipping into the cubicle. Max pushed the papers toward Tom. "Yeah, look," Max replied. "Vincent has 3 broken ribs, a broken larynx, and possible permanent damage to his knee. Tony's condition isn't much better. He has a broken jaw, dislocated shoulder, and concussion." Max looked closely at his friend's face. "You're starting a war here, Tom?" he asked. "I didn't start this war, Tom," he replied. "I'm just finishing it." Max pulled out more papers. "I checked everything I could. Torres has been working with Donald for about 2 years. They run a pretty sophisticated operation, finding desperate people and offering them bogus investment opportunities. Then they leave them penniless. Max said that your wife Ellen helped them start their companies. She handled all the paperwork." "How many people were affected?" Tom asked. "As far as we know, at least 20. Most of them lost everything." Tom stashed the list in his pocket. "What are you planning?" Max asked. "It's better if you don't know," Tom said. Tom's phone vibrated. It was Detective Ramirez asking for another appointment. Tom finished his drink and walked out. He found Izzy in the police station parking lot, leaning against his car. "There's something you need to see," she said, holding out the file to him. Judge Presley was regularly wiring money to an offshore account. It was a lot. It was much bigger than his paycheck could explain. Tom looked over the bank statements. "But that's not all," the detective continued, and pulled out more photographs. It turned out that Presley had a weakness for young prostitutes, and Donald's men supplied them, and supplied party cocaine as well. The mob owned the judge outright. "Useful information," Tom said, but his smile didn't look good. "But they've never dealt with someone like me." Back home, Tom laid out all the materials on his dining room table: surveillance photos, financial records, witness statements. The pieces of the puzzle are finally coming together. Donald's operation was bigger than he thought it'd be. Real estate fraud was just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath that, there were layers of money laundering, drug dealing, and prostitution. It was all protected by corrupt officials and mafia connections. Helena knew about it. She should have known, and yet she decided to team up with them. She was helping the bandits destroy him. She got a message on his phone that said, "Run away while you can." The number was unknown. He kept taking notes. Donald's whole operation was based on keeping the victims quiet. This one helped create the appearance of legitimate action. But Judge Presley was the weak link. If he got removed, the whole thing would fall apart. Tom pulled out the list of people Max had given him. These were people who had lost their homes and possessions. They had nothing left to lose. It's time to give them a chance for revenge, Tom decided. He got the invitations to the private equity recovery meeting ready in a few hours and invited all the victims to Torres's office for a meeting tomorrow afternoon. Then he started going over the observation notes that Izzy had given him. Here's Presley leaving the brothel, Presley's meeting with known drug dealers. Presley accepted envelopes of money from Donald's associates. Tom made 3 copies of the recordings and saved them to separate flash drives. He kept one for the media. He also made a copy for the Bar Association, and 1 copy for Judge Presley himself. Maria called. "Daddy, when can I come home?" Daughter asked. "Soon, baby, soon." He kept his voice gentle. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Maria replied. "Sarah's parents are very nice to me." After a pause, she added, "Mama kept calling." "Don't answer that," her dad suggested. "I wasn't planning on it." Maria's voice got louder and more intense. "Dad, be careful, okay? I can't afford to lose you either." After hanging up, Tom went back to planning. All the evidence of criminal activity was right there in plain sight. Judge Presley's corruption, Torres's victims, Castellano's criminal empire. But if you pull the right strings, the whole thing can fall apart. The soldier in him understood what it all meant. This wasn't about revenge. This was war, intelligence gathering, targeted assessment. Helen, Donald, Torres, Castellano. They were about to find out what happens when you hurt a warrior's family. Tom smiled in the dark. The next day, Tom sat in his truck outside of Julian Torres's office building, watching through binoculars as the con man's victims arrived one by one. 20 people whose lives Torres ruined. Each carried folders with evidence of their plans. Tom had contacted all of them and given them evidence of Torres's fraud, and he gave them a chance for revenge. His phone vibrated. There was a message from Izzy. Judge Presley just signed off on the search warrants. Tom checked his watch. 30 minutes later, Presley realizes his mistake. He signs search warrants for property belonging to his benefactors, the Castellano family. But by then, it'll be too late. The victims were in the lobby of the building, looking angry. One of them was a banker who lost his pension, a widow whose house was stolen using fake documents. The contractor has to declare bankruptcy. They're all waiting for Torres to arrive. Tom's burner phone rang, Danny Lee's number. "The transfers are all set," Danny said. Donald's accounts were empty. They'd sent everything to charities. "What about offshore accounts?" "Nope, didn't have any." "So Helen's stash is gone?" Tom nodded. "Just send the evidence to the IRS anonymously. It's already done." Tom ended the call. A black Mercedes pulled into the parking lot. Torres showed up at work. Tom watched through binoculars as the rascal came out, adjusting his expensive suit. Torres hadn't noticed the crowd yet, too busy checking out his reflection in the car window. Tom pulled out his cell phone and dialed the number he'd gotten from Max. "Hey, Mr. Torres, this is David Chung from the SEC. We've gotten some pretty troubling reports about your investment practices. I'm in your lobby with a few former clients who'd like to chat about this." Torres froze, then turned to the entrance of the building and recognized the faces waiting for him. The con artist's usual confidence faltered, revealing a genuine fear. Tom smiled and dialed another number. It was the number of a local news station. He told the desk clerk it was an anonymous call, but if the station sent a TV crew to 85 Road Street, they could film a report on the meeting. Groups of fraud victims with the person who stole their savings. Torres tried to sneak back to his car, but the crowd had already spotted him. They rushed forward, waving documents and shouting accusations. News channel cars pulled into the parking lot, cameras rolling. Tom got a call from Donald. Tom hit play on the tape and got a recording of Donald's monologue. "You bastard! What did you do? The IRS is here. They're taking over everything. I'll kill you for this." Then another call, this time from Helena. Her voice was shaking with panic. "Tom, please help. They're saying it was all a scam, that Donald was laundering money. They're freezing my accounts. I need help." Tom ended the call without saying anything. He was watching Torres try to break through the crowd through binoculars. His designer suit is all wrinkled and torn now. A camera crew was there to film everything. Reporters were taking notes, and survivors were sharing their stories. In the blink of an eye, decades of fraud were exposed. The police arrived on the scene with their lights and sirens on. Tom recognized Izzy getting out of the car with a warrant in hand. The detective had timed it perfectly. Torres was caught on camera surrounded by his victims, as well as the moment federal agents arrived to arrest him. Tom's disposable cell phone vibrated. Message from Danny. The files have been sent to the IRS, and Torres's entire operation has been uncovered. Donald's involvement in the fraud is documented. They're both going to trial for it. The plan worked like a charm. Torres will speak out to save himself by accusing Donald of fraud. Donald would freak out and probably try to run. Castellano will realize he's become a liability and write him off. Tom started his truck and took off. One goal has been accomplished, two more to go. His next stop was the construction site where he had arranged to meet Tony. It was one of the bodyguards who threw Maria down the stairs. The man agreed to talk, thinking Tom wanted to negotiate peace. Tom parked behind the unfinished building and checked his recording equipment. Everything Tony says is going to be recorded, documented, and preserved as evidence against Donald and his criminal associates. The bodyguard arrived on time and alone. His face was still all bruised and messed up from their last run-in. "Hurry up," Tony said. "I shouldn't be here." Tom stepped out of the shadows. "Tell me about Donald's operations." Tom said he wanted to know about money laundering and all his other operations. "You're out of your mind," that was the answer. Tom pulled out his phone, turned on the recording. Vincent talks about drug shipments, names names, and goes into detail about the criminal operations. The bodyguard's face went pale. "How'd you find out?" he asked. "It's simple," Tom replied. "Your partner Vincent talks in his sleep, and hospital rooms have surprisingly thin walls." Tom's voice got louder and harsher. "Start talking, or the feds get this tape, and a copy will be sent to Castellano." Tony spoke up. He went on for a while, talking about Donald's crimes, his ties to organized crime, and the whole web of corruption he'd built. Tom wrote it all down. When Tony was done, Tom handed him an envelope. It had a plane ticket to Miami in it. It had enough money to start a new life. He could either go into hiding or keep the record secret. The bodyguard grabbed the envelope with shaking hands and took off. Tom sent copies of the recording to a few safe houses. It was just in case something happened to him. His phone vibrated. Max was sending him coordinates. It's time for the next step. Donald panicked as he watched his empire crumble. Ellen was going to be desperate. She had funneled the stolen money into accounts that were impossible to trace. They were both scared and making mistakes. Meanwhile, Tom sat there with a smile on his face. The trap had worked. Now it's time for the fun part. The spectacle of them destroying themselves in an attempt to avoid collapse. Tom parked his truck behind an abandoned loading dock and checked his weapon. The Glock was clean and loaded. The spare pistol was strapped to his ankle. His phone lit up with messages from Danny. Donald had tried to access the accounts. They're all empty. He's going crazy. Max sent him a message. Castellanos militants have been spotted in the Donald's office. The detective says, Presley sings like a bird, naming names, dates, everything. The whole operation is solved. Tom deleted the messages and got out of the car. The warehouse up front was Donald's main front used for money laundering. They sold wholesale electronics that weren't even manufactured. This is going to be the downfall of Donald. The security cameras had already been disabled, thanks to Danny's hacking skills. Tom moved in the shadows, counting his heartbeats. Right on schedule, a black SUV pulled up to the loading dock. Donald walked out of the room, holding his briefcase. His fancy suit was wrinkled, and his face was pale with fear. He was accompanied by two Castellano fighters who looked like they were about to be in a bad mood. "The money's here," Donald said, his voice shaking. The bigger fighter grabbed the briefcase and checked the contents. "It's empty," he said. "What? Number?" "It's not possible." Donald's eyes went wild. "It was just here." "You lost 10 million of the family's money," the second fighter said, threateningly. "Mr. Castellano wants an answer." Suddenly Tom appeared, enjoying Donald's horrified expression. "Is this what you're looking for?" He picked up a USB drive. "Here are the bank records, transfer histories, and proof of where all that money actually went." "You bastard!" Donald lunged forward, but the fighters held him back. "No, Donald, this is your fault. You've gotten greedy. You're careless." Tom spoke calmly. "Did you really think you could steal from the mob and get away with it?" "I didn't steal anything. It was business," Donald wheezed. "It is indeed." Tom turned to the combatants. "Check his offshore accounts, the ones he thought were secret." One of the fighters' cell phones rang. "The boss says it's true. They found the bills." Donald's face went pale. "No, wait, I can explain." "The boss doesn't want to hear it." The fighter's hand moved toward the gun. "He wants his money back." "I'll get the money back. I just need some time," said Donald. "You're wrong. Time's up, Donald," Tom said with a smile. "The feds are closing in. The judge is testifying. Your whole operation is busted." "The Castellanos can't risk leaving you alive," one of the fighters said, and drew his gun. Tom moved back into the shadows. "Goodbye, Donald. Say hello to your friends in hell." Donald's screams echoed through the warehouse. 2 shots muffled by the silencers. Then, silence. Tom waited for the SUV to pull away and then called the police anonymously. Case closed. His phone vibrated. Ellen called again. This time he answered. "It's over," he said before she could speak. "Donald is dead. Torres is in custody. The money's gone. Tom, I'm sorry." She was shaking with tears. "What am I gonna do? I'm totally broke." "You got exactly what you deserved." Tom's voice was cold. "You chose this path." He ended the conversation and drove to the motel where Ellen was hiding. When he knocked, she opened the door, swapping her designer clothes for some cheap stuff from the department store. Her makeup was smeared from crying. He handed her an envelope with evidence of her involvement in Donald's crimes. "All of these documents will go to the feds. You're going to join your brother in hell. You can't prove anything," Ellen argued. Tom's smile was unnerving. "I've got records, bank records, and witness statements." Helen's shoulders slumped. "What do you want? Sign the divorce papers, and don't ever contact me or Maria again, or I'll destroy you." She signed the papers. Tom left her there, sobbing in a cheap motel room. Her dreams of wealth and power crumbled. His phone vibrated with a message from a detective with an update. "The investigation is going as planned. They're saying Donald's death will be ruled a mob hit. Torres cooperated by getting everyone involved. The Castellano empire is crumbling." Tom drove home feeling good. They tried to destroy him, harm his daughter, and steal everything he had built. But in the end, he totally destroyed them. As Tom made coffee, sunlight streamed through the kitchen window. The headline in this morning's paper read, "Major Crimes Solved." His phone vibrated with Max's call. "It's all over the news," Max said. They'd solved Donald's murder, Torres's arrest, the whole operation. The deed is done. Tom took a sip of his coffee. The Castellanos think Donald stole their money. The feds think it was a mob crackdown. Case closed. And what about Ellen? She signed the papers this morning. His doorbell rings and it's Maria coming back from Sarah's place. She looked much better. Tom's phone vibrated. Detective Ramirez called. "Just wanted you to know," Izzy said. "Torres spilled the beans on everyone. Judge Presley's moving on up. The whole corruption network has been exposed." He ended the call and went into the kitchen with his daughter. Later on, Tom was still in his office by himself. Tom reviewed the last pieces of his revenge. He had stashed Donald's stolen millions in offshore accounts. There were also files about Ellen's crimes. "I'm ready to destroy her if she ever comes back." The network of allies he built, Maximum, Danny, Izzy, they're all loyal friends who get the importance of justice. His phone rang. It was an unknown number. He answered cautiously. "Mr. Tom Williams?" said a very cultured voice, probably Castellano himself. "I want to thank you for exposing Donald's theft. The family really appreciates your discretion. You're under our protection now. No one's going to bother you or your daughter ever again." Tom smiled. Everything went smoothly. His enemies are destroyed. His daughter is safe. His future is secure. The soldier in him knew he'd totally won. The war is over. He won. And God help anyone who ever tries to harm them again. Epilogue, 5 years later. The construction company's new headquarters stood proudly against the cityscape. Williams and Associates Construction is highlighted in bold letters on the glass facade. On the top floor, Thomas Williams was reviewing quarterly reports with the same intensity he once used to plan military operations. At 50, his hair was now gray rather than dark, but his eyes were still as sharp as ever. And he's still got the stamina to keep up with his workouts. This is the end of our story. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to this channel.